Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Caribbean Telecommunications Union's Forum, ICT in Education, a Caribbean Forum, today, Wednesday, 26 January. This is a very kicking off what promises to be a very exciting and positive year for the CTU in terms of leading in digital transformation in the policy space throughout the region. ICT in Education, a Caribbean Forum is being held in partnership with UNESCO, the International Telecommunication Union, and support from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. I said, my name is Josanne Leonard, and sitting here with me is Rodney Taylor, who's Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. Before I ask Rodney to share a few remarks this morning, just to welcome you on the Hubelo platform and to give you a little bit of guidance to interact with our speakers today, kindly use the panel located to the right on this session page that you're on. To open and close this panel, select the first icon on the side menu. The first option is live chat, where you can speak with other attendees, and you can also comment there on the live session. The second option you have is polls. This is where all polling questions will appear during the session. The other option is very important, the Q&A. We ask that all questions be placed in this section for ease of locating. Questions placed here will be directed to and answered by our speakers. And just to note that if on the odd chance that you do have any difficulties at all while using the platform, please email events@ctu.int. That's events@ctu.int for any assistance, but we know that actually will not happen. Today's proceedings, we should also say to those of you who may have people who are not on the Hubelo platform, but you can send them a message now. The event is being streamed on Facebook Live and YouTube on the Caribbean Telecommunications social media platforms. So again, I welcome all 380 plus and still registering who've joined us today. We'd also like to thank our premium sponsor, Viasat, our bronze sponsor, Rackstiv, and again, acknowledge the support of the partners for this event. Also, in the interest of time, all the biographies of the speakers appearing today and tomorrow are listed here on the Hubelo platform, so you can go find out more. So without further ado, it's time for me to ask Rodney Taylor to share a few opening remarks. Rodney?
Thank you, Josanne. Good morning, everyone. And I want to start by saying that if you're watching this, if you're hearing me, it means you have internet access. And it may seem basic and fundamental, but we assume that everyone else has. That's not the case. If you signed up for this event on our virtual platform, it means you have a level of digital literacy, unless of course you got your teenage son or daughter to help you do it. But not everyone has a device and not everyone has digital skills. And the COVID-19 global pandemic has placed the spotlight on global inequality in many areas, not just on how the vaccines are distributed, but from the perspective of the digital divide. And I've been waiting to have this particular discussion around ICT and education for quite some time. And so I'm excited about this two-day forum and the opportunity to put the issues on the table with respect to how we have done as a region and what are some areas that we can improve on. You would be aware in terms of the CTU's own mandate that we are an institution of CARICOM, as evidenced by the flag here in the background. And its mandate from the CARICOM heads of government is in relation to the formulation of policy in information and communications technology within the CARICOM region. And technological innovation is cross-cutting, and more recently, innovations in information and communications technology are having an impact across every sector of our economy. Agriculture, we talk about ICT in agriculture. We talk about tourism and manufacturing and so on. And of course, education, which brings us here today. The Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, published a study in 2020 And you can download it. I wouldn't get into the details of the study. It's available in the CTU booth on the Google platform. But it spoke about the challenges specific to some of our Caribbean countries around the lack of devices and internet access. And nearly a decade ago, UNESCO held a similar forum in Barbados focusing on ICT and education leadership. And we will discuss the details of that report later today as well. And it will be interesting to see what discussion was a decade ago and what it is now in the current environment. And on that note, I want to thank our partners, UNESCO, ITU, and we want to thank OECS, the OECS Secretariat as well for the support that we've received. All of you have played key roles in putting together the forum and in terms of actual policy development in this area. The UNESCO has an ICT competency framework for teachers, and we will be discussing that as well. Connectivity is a critical issue. I mentioned the lack of internet access. And so the ITU will be speaking about their GIGA project, connecting not just individual homes, but their focus in particular is on connecting schools. And what we've seen is that schools have become hubs and almost, neighborhood cafes for internet access for those homes that don't have. And of course, the delivery of content delivery platforms that allow for interactive experiences is also critical, and we do have some of our partners that will be speaking about immersive experiences and online learning platforms. And I actually should segue into our webinar on Monday. If you haven't signed up for it, we're speaking about the metaverse. It's called Traversing the Metaverse, a Caribbean Perspective. And I believe that there are many opportunities in relation to interactive learning using metaverse platforms and technology. So we look forward to the discussion today. We will have a very interactive session. It is important that we do have this conversation and that this conversation leads to some policy outcomes, some policy recommendations, and it helps to raise the level of awareness of what the challenges are at the regional level, particularly in the field of education. So we'll make some policy recommendations coming out of this. We'll make some observations. But I'm sure that you as stakeholders will also gain some insights about ICT and education that will help you in dealing with your own unique situation. Beyond all the stakeholders I mentioned already, you are the most important stakeholders as teachers, as principals, as parents, and as citizens. And we must not forget the psychological and social impact of all of this. The lack of social interaction that the pandemic has led to and the online learning. When we were children, well, I should speak for myself, we used to take sticks and roll bicycle tires out on the street, and we would make trash bone kites. You know what a trash bone kite is?
I know about pitching marbles.
Pitching marbles, that's a good one. We climbed trees, right? Today, Fortnite, Roblox, Decentraland, and other virtual platforms are now the order of the day. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Depends on who you ask. What about harmful content and cyberbullying? And there will be a session on child online protection as well with the support of the ITU. So what are the implications of all of this? We will talk about this in our formal session tomorrow. So I invite you to join us again tomorrow. So my very brief remarks, I will close by giving special thanks to our distinguished panelists and our moderators who are taking the time to share with us some of their knowledge and experience. And we do have a wealth of knowledge and experience here represented today. And I want to thank you, most of all, our participants, for your interest and your questions on this very critical topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rodney Taylor here, Secretary General here at the CTU, and for positing this very, very important discussion, which will be the first of many, particularly in this area, because education is so cross-cutting in terms of national development and regional development. And I know personally from the invitation that I sent out that quite a few people who have an interest in education beyond teachers, people who are developers, people who are content creators, and so signed up this morning. They were really excited. They didn't know about it, and now they've gotten on board. So I'm sure you're going to get a lot of feedback there as well. Okay, so we've established the sort of rules and guidelines, and so the next order of business is for me to welcome Mr. Sylvester Cadet, one of the partners with the CTU on this ICT in Education Forum. Sylvester Cadet is the Program Officer of the International Telecommunication Union, Caribbean countries, headquarters based in Barbados, and he's going to bring greetings on behalf of the ITU. Mr. Cadet.
Thank you so much. Let me say a special good morning to all participants and to acknowledge Secretary General of the CTU, Mr. Rodney Taylor, Mr. Carlos Vargas of UNESCO, Maria Myers of SMA in Jamaica, and of course, Victor Perez Rubio of UNESCO, other colleagues, of course, Mr. Nigel Kazmi, and others. Let me first of all give a special welcome to the participants. First of all, for one on behalf of the area representative of the ITU, Mr. Cleveland Thomas, who would have liked to be here, but is attending to other exigent matters in one of the member states. As we look at this particular forum, we realize that we are really in the middle of a pandemic, and in the early months of the pandemic, UNESCO estimated that at least 1.3 billion children and youth were out of school, and that school closures occurred in at least 138 countries. And that is coming from the statistics of 2020. Then 137 million children in Latin America and the Caribbean were affected. School closures in the Caribbean affected at least 1.7 million children across 21 countries in the region that was surveyed. Fast forward past 2020 and 2021, and we see that even without latest collection of data, we know that the situation has been further exacerbated. Education systems and structures across the globe has been tested and continue to be tested in unfathomable ways as countries went on lockdown. And the impact of this on education was immediately felt as schools shut down and new modalities for learning were being explored. And while the true impact of the pandemic will be measured over many years to come, some stark and harsh realities struck as education sectors sought to mitigate through online learning. And some of the critical challenges that were encountered were the limited and in many cases no access to telecommunications services, especially the internet. Other challenges included limited or no access to online learning platforms. And in that specific instance, you find that a number of vulnerable children were affected. Those without access, those without devices, and those who, because of the socioeconomic situation, just fell on the wayside. It was estimated then also that at least 463 million children worldwide were unable to access remote learning during COVID-19 in 2020. Now that was back then in 2020. And I'm certain that the figures are more alarming. In the first quarter of last year, UNICEF also indicated that in Latin America and the Caribbean, the data shows that the percentage of children not receiving any form of education across the region had soared dramatically from 4 to 18% in the past few months. And of course, the UN projections reveal that COVID-19 may push up to 3 million additional children out of school in Latin America and the Caribbean. So how would this affect levels of attrition, dropouts, less skilled young people whose IQ or MQ and EQ would have been impacted? And the question would be, how would this affect mental health and well-being? How it would affect skills development? How it would affect long-term productivity, employment or unemployment as the case may be, or youth innovation and entrepreneurship? So these are some of the key challenges that would come to mind as we address ICTs in education within the framework of this existing pandemic. Now, some of the countries also experience other challenges, that of not having an online national curriculum, or in cases where they have a shell of a curriculum, no content, or content that is adapted to children and adolescents, or those with disabilities for that matter. Or in some cases, like in Trinidad, where you have migrants and a lot of refugees flocking in from other areas. And as you have movements up and down the region, then this poses even a greater problem for young people and for children in particular. Then there was limited knowledge and capacity of teachers to use online platforms and distance learning resources. Other key challenges are limited offline initiatives to respond to educational needs, lack of educational materials that are culturally sensitive, and then, of course, lack of tools to monitor and evaluate progress of learning outcomes. So as you can see, there is a wide array of challenges that needs addressing. And from an ITU perspective, from our mandate, we see critically access issues associated with infrastructure, associated with cost of service and cost of putting in infrastructure, pricing issues, pricing of services, issues related to the actual school connectivity, the capacity of networks. And by that, we're talking about broadband access, adequate or inadequate as the case may be. Then there are issues of quality of service. You may have the connectivity, you may have the access, but the quality of service may be poor. And coupled with that, you have cybersecurity issues, especially now with children that are very vulnerable to the vagaries on the internet. Then cybersecurity becomes an imperative. And then we see the need for adjustments and in some cases realignment of policies, realignment of legislative processes, and realignment of regulatory frameworks to answer to these exigencies. So then how do we as a region address the dilemma? One that requires a certain earnestness towards addressing the multifaceted approaches to ICT in education. And indeed, it is above all a socioeconomic, it is a cultural, and yes, it is a moral imperative that the not just the governments, but the organizations and key stakeholders in the education sector needs to address. It is a socioeconomic, it's a cultural, and it is a moral imperative. And we need addressing it not only from a COVID-19 response approach, as indeed the Caribbean region had been discussing ICTs in education for the past 2 decades of the 21st century. And just to highlight this, in fact, the CTU, in collaboration with UNESCO in 2012, and in partnership with the Commonwealth of Learning and the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I think Microsoft was also part. Then they brought together a number of stakeholders to address these issues. So even pre-COVID, these issues loomed, except that in this particular instance, it is the immediacy of handling these issues that becomes paramount to us as we discuss during the course of the sessions today and tomorrow. The ITU has been addressing these issues also through the Telecommunications Development Bureau. And I would just say very quickly that one of the initiatives of the ITU was the Connect a School, Connect a Community initiative. And this was designed to promote broadband internet connectivity for schools worldwide so that schools could serve as community ICT centers for rural and marginal, urban and isolated areas. since then, we have moved away from just addressing the infrastructural aspects and addressing a more holistic approach through GIGA, an initiative to connect every school to the internet and every young person to information and to give them opportunity and choice. And it is premised on 4 pillars. First of all, mapping every school's connectivity, and this is being done across the OECS and Barbados at this time. So GIGA is engaging with the various ministries of education and Ministry of ICTs in the various states that I've mentioned, the OECS. And also there's another key pillar. After mapping, it's the finance connectivity aspect, then the connect every school, and then also to empower young people. You will hear a little more about that from one of my colleagues, Michel Marios, during the course of deliberations. I think it's tomorrow's agenda. And then there's a child online protection. Protection of children, as I mentioned, becomes very important. The child online protection guidelines that encompass children, guidelines that encompass parents and educators, industry, and of course, policymakers. You will hear a bit about that from my colleague, Dion Alton. Other aspects that are critical that the ITU is addressing on ICTs in education is also in terms of gender equity and equality. And Girls in ICTs and Girls Can Code initiative are some of the ways in which the IT is handling this. And then, of course, there's also the whole issue of digital skills. There are a number of other areas, but of course, I highlighted these to point to the fact that these areas, that of infrastructure, child online protection, gender equity and equality, inclusiveness, development of digital skills and improving on digital literacy are paramount to infusing a new kind of approach towards socioeconomic development, that of creating a new kind of cadre, a new entrepreneurial class that can handle the various exigencies in the various sectors. I think I've said a mouthful, and some of the issues and the challenges that you would be addressing. I just hope that as we go forward, we would engage in an earnest manner that would allow for concrete recommendations to come out of this, and just reminding that there is an immediacy due to the socioeconomic, the cultural, and the moral imperative of assisting our young people in the education sector. So with this, let me wish everyone well during the course of the deliberations, and of course, have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cadet. And I think you really framed really the session over the next, the forum over the next 2 days, positing a number of the markers that hopefully, and I'm sure our various presenters will tackle in their specific areas. But I think really positing the framework and the philosophical framework, if you will. So thank you very much for that, and to the work of the ITU and for partnering with the CTU on this very, very important junction in Caribbean development. Next up, we have Mr. Carlos Vargas Tamez, who is head of the Secretariat of the International Task Force for Teachers for Education 2030 UNESCO. Mr. Tamez, we saw you in the waiting room, so are you with us and ready to join?
I am here with you, and I'm very happy to be.
Good, good. We're happy to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Caribbean Telecommunications Union and ITU for organizing this event together with our colleagues from UNESCO's Office for the Caribbean based in Kingston. Now, in my brief address, I would like to highlight the work that teachers have done during the pandemic, particularly to sustain learning in view of school closures and the changes that we have seen in education formats and calendars that resulted from the COVID-19 crisis. And I would like to draw some lessons from this as to how education has been transformed and the implications that this has on teachers. Now, in referring to the progress that has been made, I would like to draw lessons from a particular project we led in the Caribbean together with Blackboard and with the support of the German cooperation of GIZ to build capacity among teachers, namely in terms of digital competencies and the use of ICTs pedagogically. And finally, I will just bring in a couple of reflections as to what are some future actions, sharing some ideas with you from our recent experience in the past 2 years of dealing with the school closures and educational disruptions and the digital turn, but also from UNESCO's recent publication, Reimagining Our Futures Together, a new social contract for education, which outlines precisely what are some of the challenges and what are some of the promising avenues for us to craft together this new social contract for education and what role the technologies might play in helping in this process. So first of all, just to reiterate what has been mentioned before, during the pandemic, we saw teachers and education staff played a key role in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and they have faced numerous emerging demands during the social and sanitary crisis. Most teachers have not only had to replan and adapt education processes, this includes adjusting methods and curricula, designing materials, diversifying the media, the formats, the platforms that they have used to provide education, but they also have taken part in activities to safeguard the material safety on one hand, but also the well-being of the learners and of their families. Teachers and education personnel have faced the demands of providing socio-emotional and psychological support to students and their families, which is an aspect of their work that has become increasingly important during the pandemic, and one that we have certainly not given the proper weight, and it's something that we can begin by doing as we look into the future. Now, in performing their teaching activities and meeting the demands that teachers were presented with, they often found themselves with inadequate training and resources to address the challenges of adapting teaching content and formats to learner. And this was particularly in the case of those in underprivileged contexts, in disadvantaged situations, those with disabilities, for example. Now, we know that even before the pandemic, teachers had few opportunities for training, on the one hand on the use of ICTs, and on the other one on the adaptation and on the adaptability of education by means of technology or otherwise, but for inclusion, working with the students in less favored and more diverse contexts, including learners with disabilities. Now, the past couple of years have been full of challenges, but they have also had lessons that we have learned to secure and improve teaching and learning. Now I think it is the time to reflect on the changes that education has undergone, how they have affected teachers, and how we can best harness the teaching profession. Now, one of the projects that I would like to share some lessons from took place precisely in the Caribbean last year. As I was saying, UNESCO, in cooperation with national ministries of education in the region, the Blackboard Academy, and with the kind support from GIZ and also from UNICEF, selected a number of teachers and facilitators from the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean to be trained in online pedagogies and the use of ICTs in teaching, based, of course, on UNESCO's ICT competency framework for teachers. I will not abound on this framework because my colleague Victor will be presenting it in the next session. But just to give you a little bit of context, the training aimed first at master trainers, and it was facilitated by the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning at the University of the West Indies through the Blackboard Academy online platform. The participants were assessed, and upon successful completion of the course, they received certificates for core master trainers for online and blended teaching from Blackboard Academy. The master trainers were then qualified to deliver a 4-week online course on blended learning and online strategies. And this is a group that will be teaching in turn 400 educators throughout the Caribbean. Now, what did we learn in this process? We have analyzed and systematized some of the lessons learned by surveying the participating teachers and other key stakeholders. And these are probably important lessons that we can take on as we think about how to improve the use of ICTs for education, particularly for teacher training and for education altogether. Now, one of the key lessons, and it has been mentioned before, has to do with the accessibility of online content and online environments, and accessibility altogether to the internet and to devices. Many teachers in both rural and urban areas had to overcome the lack of access to devices, to data and internet connectivity. And this is not exclusive of particular countries or areas, but we also saw the same in also better off areas. Although governments were able to provide a certain number of tablets for students, phones were the only devices that were accessible to many. So this is something to consider, and it's something important as to the limitations that they pose in terms of pedagogical engagement. As a result, teachers had to launch drives to get tablets and laptops donated for their learners, and even then, some students were out of reach of the internet. Students reported going to neighborhoods or families, and others lost motivation or interest due to these overwhelming difficulties. Meanwhile, teachers carried the worry of getting their learners online or finding low-tech or in-person solutions while adapting content for online use. I think that is a valuable lesson in terms of the diversification of means of instruction. I think that a combination of more traditional technologies with ICTs, with in-person solutions according to the different context is an important one, and also to gauge the scope and the limitations that some of the technologies represent. One second lesson has to do with the lack of induction to online teaching and school management issues. Teachers reported that the abrupt changes generated by school shutdowns gave them new responsibilities, but without knowledge on how to set up online classrooms and how to take or how to virtualize content and relationships altogether. Most teachers did not receive an induction to the new schooling arrangements, and we saw that as well in terms of the protocols, for example, that were put in place during the pandemic, some of which we are seeing today, and they're changing on a regular basis. That is only one part of the induction that wasn't there, but there was other in terms of how to set up online classrooms. The third lesson has to do with maintaining the quality of interaction and engagement. This is also something that was mentioned before. I think beyond, and even in places where we find that there's connectivity, that there are the resources in terms of the devices and the material conditions for learning, sometimes keeping engagement is difficult, and we've spoken of attrition, and we've seen disengagement from education taking place as a result. And this is something in our study that we heard from teachers. One of the things that they miss the most is the daily interaction and engagement with their students in physical classrooms. And I think that we could say the same as to learners missing their teachers and the possibilities for face-to-face interaction that is somewhat limited with online formats. The possibilities for two-way communication are more limited, is more one-dimensional. There are fewer opportunities for teachers to share experiences that support learning and so on. So teachers in the region report that they miss certain activities, such as physically seeing their students graduate, for example. Now, this speaks of beyond the academic, the affective, the social dimension of education was greatly missed. And I think training on how to use technologies for these purposes is necessary. I mean, how do we prioritize this area around social and emotional learning, for example, about the support that they need, and how do we leverage technologies to do that as well? One final lesson that I'd like to bring in has to do with working in diversity, working particularly with children with special learning needs. I mean, we've mentioned already, of course, the challenges of working in underprivileged contexts where there's a lack of resources of connectivity, but even where there are different paths and different learning styles that need to be catered for, and that technological resources tend to be more standard and not necessarily cater, for example, to learners with disabilities, with special education needs. That's the case of autism, of dyslexia, or others. Teachers explain that their relationships with these learners are built over time on a one-to-one basis and founded on the teacher's close knowledge of individuals' educational challenges and how to use simple offline approaches and methods to address them. Now, it is important also to mention, for example, in the case of autism, but that can apply to many other not only special learning needs, but to learners altogether, is how do we assess the overexposure to screen time, for example, and how easy or how difficult it is to cope with it. I mean, certainly for learners with autism, it's almost an impossibility. But beyond that, I think that the pace, the rapidity of the processes, of the learning processes that we have seen due to the use of technologies pose challenges to processes that would otherwise be paced. They would be reflexive. They would take time in building, for example, critical thinking, analytical skills, and many others that are part and parcel of educational outcomes that are being missed out, and where technologies might have a different role to play to enhance learning. And finally, how can we, I mean, from these lessons, how do we look into the future? I would like to say that despite the challenges that we have seen, the COVID-19 crisis has been an opportunity for creativity and for innovation in educational technology, in teaching and learning, in the mobilization of different actors, and this is something that we must capitalize upon. In the past 2 years, we have heard a plethora of accounts of teachers innovating and adapting to continue with teaching. We heard examples of teachers creating videos to support online instruction, preparing take-home packages for students living in no or low-tech contexts, checking in on students' well-being via social media, and going out of their way to reach learners in remote and rural areas despite challenging circumstances. We have also witnessed the new role of parents in the education of children, and new forms of collaboration between parents and teachers, between schools and communities. During school closures, we have also seen churches, markets, museums habilitated as learning spaces. Now, these are just a few of the examples of the changes that the pandemic has accelerated and how we can leverage this to promote lifelong learning We have seen, as we said, the diversification of formats, the diversification of spaces, and we can continue to promote also the diversification of content of education to respond to the many demands and to the different purposes that go beyond the academic and beyond the qualification, taking into consideration, as we said, the social, the cultural dimension of education. We've seen health and well-being, gender equality, discrimination, among others. Now, this is something I believe that technologies can also help address. As we said, education is a relational and a collective endeavor. It is a common good, as has been reaffirmed in UNESCO's most recent report, Reimagining Our Futures Together, a new social contract for education, which was just published in November last year. The report also highlights the paramount role that teachers have in producing this social contract, in leveraging the knowledge that they produce in the classroom, in leveraging their innovations to inform policy. These forms of social dialogue are very important, in which teachers may be able to participate in educational decision-making and in the transformation of education. So what can we hope for in this forum and beyond, and what could be some relevant questions to answer, is how can technologies and connectivity help in this direction? How can we use ICTs to connect us and to bring us together, while looking at the challenges that ICTs have brought forth? Issues of privacy, overexposure, the shaping of the time and thus the content of education, the digital gap that has been mentioned by my colleagues from ITU and the Caribbean as well. And how can they contribute to a transformation of education that we want to see? One that is inclusive, one that is more equitable, and that one that leaves no one behind. So those are some of the questions that we are left with that I'm hoping will be addressed in this forum. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tamez. Another very, very rich, thought-provoking, and I'm sure even the information that you alluded to that may not have been more widely known, even by teachers and so, which is the documentation that has been assembled by your group in partnership with UNESCO on the social contract and so on. I think that that's information that we will be sharing because it sounds very much like the kinds of things that teachers, educators, parents, and everyone in the ecosystem would benefit from interfacing with. So thank you so much for that very rich presentation and opening up all of these questions as well. We'd now like to welcome His Excellency Dr. Didacus Jules. Dr. Jules is the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and he joins us with actually via a video presentation, which will now be played.
It is an honor and a pleasure for us at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States to participate in this Caribbean Forum on ICT in Education, organized by the Caribbean Telecoms Union in collaboration with UNESCO and the International Telecommunications Union. As an educator, I have always championed the imperative of ICT in education as a necessary and transformational technology for driving learning. As we move towards the dawn of the 21st century, leaders and policymakers in the Caribbean and around the world were all touting the coming digital revolution and the need for education to adapt to that new reality. Much of these pronouncements remained at the level of theoretical posturing and futuristic prognostication. Many of the efforts made in that early period were symbolic rather than substantive or systemic. So in the first decade of 2000, many Caribbean governments focused on the provision of laptops to schools with the fanfare of 1 laptop per child. This overlooks some fundamental truths about education. Education is an ecosystem that needs to be carefully calibrated if it is to guarantee learning. It is not enough to provide laptops in schools if we do not ensure adequate broadband. Laptops with broadband, but without educational content suited to the societal context, is simply a tool for student serendipity. And laptops in classrooms without teacher understanding of the technology and teacher capability to utilize it as a pedagogical tool renders the device useless in the classroom context. At the OECS, we have always held a view that the challenge of ICT in education, while appearing complex, is relatively simple and best expressed in the following principles. 1. Transformation of education must be done across the ecosystem, and a change in one domain must be buttressed by corresponding changes in other domains of the system. If we change the curriculum, we must support that by training teachers in its application. We need to support this by having appropriate learning material and relevant text. We need to assess this a real journey of discovery, and it moves the teacher from being the sage on the stage to being simply the guide on the side. And our teachers must accept the reality that they will never be better at the mastery of that technology than their students, no matter the student's age or stage. There is a generational adaptation to digital technology that will be difficult for many teachers to bridge. And this is their opportunity to have their students take greater ownership of their learning. Thirdly, it is a sacred principle for us that we are too seduced by imported technologies and not confident or accepting enough of our own capabilities as Caribbean people. Millions of foreign exchange dollars have been spent in the past decade, especially since the pandemic, in the payment of exorbitant subscriptions for proprietary platforms and proprietary content that is sadly unconnected to Caribbean reality. We have the talent in this region and in its diaspora to not simply be consumers of other people's digital goods and services, but to be creators of our own content and platforms. The global nature of the borderless digital economy allows us that opportunity if we only believe and invest in our own. In this forum, you'll be given a preview by my colleagues in our education unit of some of the work we are doing in the OECS to operationalize these principles. And you will see how the results go beyond the operationalization of digital technologies in education, but are also helping to make learning fun, to make students take responsibility for their own learning, and revolutionary to be creators of their own content, not for school, but for life. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this forum, and we wish you all the best on this journey.
Video presentation or message rather from one who I consider a sage in the Caribbean, sage on the stage, Dr. Didicus Jules. And again, short, sweet, to the point, and very much positing the whole issue of Caribbean cultural or confidence in creating technology, content, and so that comes out of our own imagination and know-how. So I'm sure that's another discussion, and certainly the CTU is championing a lot of work in that area. Okay, so we're actually going to move right now into the panel discussions, the first of which is current perspectives on ICT in education. And to take us through these two sessions, I'm joined by Nigel Casimir. Welcome, Nigel, who is the Deputy SG here at the CTU. And he's going to be moderating a panel which comprises Ms. Bernadette Lewis, a former SG here at the CTU, and who now holds the seat at the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization. Dr. Tamez, who spoke with us earlier, and Mr. Jermaine Anthony, who is a technical specialist at the OECS, one of the collaborators on this ICT in Education Forum. So without further ado, I introduce and hand you over now to Nigel Casimir. Nigel?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Josanne. Good morning to all our viewers and listeners, and thank you for attending this quite important forum. This particular panel, we are going to be getting different perspectives on, more current perspectives on ICT in education from our speakers. I propose, since we just heard from Dr. Vargas, that we would get the inputs from the other panelists. That's Ms. Bernadette Lewis and Mr. Julian Anthony, before we bring back in Dr. Vargas for his comments on what might have been said. Now, part of our objectives here over these 2 days, of course, is to try to identify any points of consensus for subsequent action related to enhancing ICT in education in the Caribbean. So you are invited, well, we invite our panel participants to engage with each other and see if we can identify any such points, and we also invite the audience to submit appropriate questions for clarification or suggestions that the panel can consider. And as was mentioned, you can do that via the Ubilo platform. There is the Q&A area that you can submit questions and that we can put to the panel. So without further ado, I would like to invite the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization, Ms. Bernadette Lewis, to make your intervention and give your perspectives on the topic ICT.
Great. Thank you very much, Nigel. Good to see you again, Josanne. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Secretary General of the CTU, Mr. Rodney Taylor, and all of my friends at the CTU for the opportunity to participate in this very important session. And by way of introduction, the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization is the oldest and largest intergovernmental information and communication technology organization in the Commonwealth. And throughout its various manifestations in its 122-year history, the CTO has been committed to the expansion of communication networks. And in its latter years, it has focused on fostering sustainable ICT-enabled development. And that is through the effective use of information and communication technologies. Now, in this era of the fourth industrial revolution, and also the pandemic, the CTO is focusing its attention on supporting its members on their digital transformation journeys. And we are focused about having a measurable impact in the Commonwealth and beyond. And if I could, let me just advance my slide here. The CTO is now focused on digital transformation. And digital transformation, when we speak of this, we're talking about that journey or process that integrates digital technology into all areas of an organization or a country, changing the operation of its people and systems for delivering value. And the CTO has been streamlining its operations to enhance its value proposition to our members. And we are customizing our programs to support our members at all stages of the digital transformation journey. And in this presentation, I'm talking about building capacity to support digital transformation. And so I'm focusing on the one aspect of what the CTO does in terms of the training, upskilling, building capacity. And a significant aspect, and this is a significant aspect of digital transformation, the issue of the availability of a trade, of a skilled workforce that is able to develop the technology, plan, also implement and maintain ICT solutions, and at the end of the day, having a meaningful impact. Now, the CTO for many years has been involved in developing and delivering face-to-face training programs on all aspects of ICT to CTO members through our program for development and training. But cognizant of the rapidly changing global environment and the ever-widening financial, digital, and now healthcare divides, if we are going to support digital transformation in our member countries and beyond, we have to ensure that the CTO's training programs are relevant and that they truly build capacity and that they have a measurable impact on development. And to accomplish these goals, we will be blending training modes and making optimal use of available technology, available appropriate technology tools, and in developing our training and delivering training in a way that it builds capacity. And I'm sure you all have been there. You go to a training session, it's excellent, it's wonderful, but you never have the opportunity to apply those learnings. And 6 months down the line, whatever you learned, it started evaporating. And by the end of the year, you could barely remember what the program was about. And we are moving away from this sort of training that we did. It may have served in a different age, served well in a different age, but we are replacing our old program for development and training. We are adopting a new approach. And this is what I'm going to be presenting, the new approach to capacity building for digital transformation. And I need to move at my, right, and the new approach for building capacity, there are 3 levels, right? And the first level is basic training. And this provides a general overview of an ICT topic. It provides basic understanding. So you are working in a telephone, in an ICT organization, and you need to know something about the Internet of Things. You're not going to be doing any Internet of Things projects, but you need to know about it because you're operating in the environment. So what we will provide is online, virtual, self-paced training, right? And in November last year, we launched the CTO's online learning research center. We did a soft launch, and we will be inaugurating the full-blown online learning resource center in April. So the first level is basic training. You just need to have an understanding. You don't need to get into the technical details and so on. There's self-paced programs that will do that for you. And the second level is what we call role-based training. And this is designed to enhance knowledge, to improve the practice on the job. And this sort of training is going to be facilitator-led, role-based, and scenario-enhanced. And what we will be doing is when you go through the training, we will present scenarios that are very much like your local circumstances on the ground. And the trainees will take on the role and apply their learnings to the scenarios that we will be developing so that they have that opportunity to practice the craft, the learnings that they have had. And the third level that we will be dealing with is called technology application training. And this supports the implementation of ICT solutions for very real challenges. I heard one of the other speakers said, I think that, training is a collaborative thing. It is a collective responsibility. And with our technology application training, we are looking at integrated project-associated training. And this requires a great deal of collaboration from many stakeholders in the ecosystem that Dr. Jules just mentioned. So these are the three levels, and I want to delve deeper into the technology application training. And this is how it works. Instead of us just dishing out a course catalog and telling people, well, pick the course and let us know, we want our members to identify and articulate a real need, right? So truancy in schools is an issue, right? So and then once that need is identified, we will start this research process to propose a technological solution and develop a concept for a pilot project. The third step would be to develop a detailed project plan and a budget for that pilot ICT solution that we're going to deploy. And we will be mobilizing a variety of stakeholders around this pilot project. Then we will determine, the roles and abilities of prospective trainees, what the training is required to accomplish, what training is required for which stakeholders, and who needs to know what we're doing. Yes? Then the next step would be to develop the customized courses for implementing the solution, the change management process, the business process re-engineering, and so on. Also a communication plan. All of these are customized and tailored for this project. Then we go into the procurement stage. You procure the resources. Thereafter, we actually begin the training. And it's training with a view to executing this project so that you have the opportunity to apply the learnings to a real life situation. And the training may take many forms. It could be a face-to-face, it could be a hands-on practical, it could be a virtual. But the point of the matter is the training is geared to enable the trainees to execute a project. And then we move to the implementation stage, right? And of course, the trainees are the ones doing the implementation, right? There will be supervision from the trainee and from the CTO, which is a project manager. And of course, once the implementation is done, we are moving into that cycle of monitoring, measuring, analyzing, and adjusting, right? So we will move into that aspect of it thereafter. And once that project has been implemented, we're going to measure the developmental impact. And this is very important. And this is something that the CTO is going to be focusing on, having a measurable impact in the member countries. If we do a strategy, if we do training, and it doesn't change anything, then we have to consider what we're really doing. Is it worthwhile? So we will be measuring the developmental impact. And then once we have this sense, and all of this is happening in the context of your monitoring, measuring, analyzing, adjusting, because you want to make sure that you have that impact. And when we are satisfied, the next thing that we could, it means then that you now have a cohort of trainees, of people who have the skills now. Now that they've implemented this project, they're now in a position to scale it up. So if you did an IoT pilot project in one classroom, you could now scale it up for the school. And that cohort of trainees will now have the capacity to scale it up to the school. And once we have actually scaled up to a school, you know, the confidence of your cohort would have been, you know, quite significant. You now have the opportunity now to replicate such projects, perhaps now in a health or in national security, in other sectors. You have that opportunity to replicate it. And more than that, not just in different sectors, but in different countries and in different regions. And that is how we see, this is how we propose to move forward in terms of developing those skills in our workforce. And just in conclusion, the benefits of the new approach, this blended approach is going to be using appropriate technology synergistically, right? And it's not necessarily all the bells and whistles. Sometimes the old technology can be as effective if employed in a meaningful way. And if you really think things through, sometimes you don't need all the bells and the whistles. The other thing is that the trainees now have the opportunity to apply their learning to real life challenges and situations, right? This process is going to encourage critical thinking and problem solving, because as they go through that implementation process, they're going to encounter problems, they have to figure it out, right? And those learnings are going to be applied, and then they will be able to challenge and perhaps say, well, let's not do it this way, let's do it some other way, it works better some other way. And so this, if we did it in this way, it progressively develops the skill and expertise, and it does really build capacity. And at the end of the day, the training that we will do is going to result in a development impact. And of course, you have that potential to replicate. It's not a one and done. This cohort of training, of trainees will have the ability to troubleshoot, to imagine, to develop, to come up with new projects, because all of those things are going to be built into the whole new approach to training. It is about execution. Too many plans sit on the shelf, excellent plans, but they're never implemented. So we are gearing up to have our members, their staff, we're going to be training them with a view to execution and implementation. And with that, I know my time is very short. I will end so this is just my contribution to the discussion. We have to think differently about training and upskilling and equipping our workforce if we're going to be talking about digital transformation. So I thank you all for your time and for your attention. It's really my joy to be back with you all on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. G. Would you be staying for the end of the session?
Not for the end of the session. I'm very sorry. I have another engagement I will be dropping off shortly, but I can take a couple of questions if anyone would like to, if there are any questions at this time.
I did notice one who was asking you to kindly go over the 3 points, which I think was the 3 levels of training. One is basic training.
That's right.
The role-based.
That's right.
Which is the leader-led, and then there you call it the technology application training.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are the 3.
The 3 levels. Yes.
Yes.
So we are moving away from the class, that fixed, rigid classroom teacher, and you just go through we are moving away from that. We are really seeking to apply, those learnings to real life situations.
All right, thank you very much. We would need to move on, and I'll now invite Mr. Jermaine Anthony, who's a technical specialist for education at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, that's the OECS, and he's going to present for us on the OECS digital learning ecosystem. Mr. Anthony, the floor is yours. You are there. We are hearing
I do believe I was muted. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me at this very interesting so far session. I want to perhaps take off from where my Director General left off. And one of the key things he mentioned was about the truth, some of the truths about education being somehow overlooked in the past fervor of trying to integrate technology and ICTs in education. My own background is in teaching and also as a curriculum specialist in technology integration. And a lot of even anecdotal, a lot of the research, a lot of what you see on the ground tells you that the technology on its own, or the ICT, is not in itself the solution, but the systems that we build around it. One of the terms people use a lot is digital transformation. And I think it is something that sometimes we don't take a step back and pause and think about what exactly that means. I think if we, first of all, digital has to be about information. If it is anything to do with digital, we're talking about processing information. And as such, the key imperative is for us to develop capacity with processing of information. And so that has profound impact for curriculum reform itself. And one of the key entry points, of course, is early childhood education. And the focus there must be on literacy. And so we need to think about shifting from just the purely content and knowledge transfer that has been happening to nurturing elements of critical thinking and skill development. If that doesn't happen, all the investment in appliances and devices and so on, it really doesn't amount to much, because at the end of the day, you have not really developed the thinking capacity of our people. And I'm talking from the policy level right down to admin, to technical, to delivery, to the learner level. So that I just want to begin with that sort of preamble. I did have a presentation prepared, and I want to feature what we're doing at the OSS Commission with the development of an OECS digital learning ecosystem. So this is based on the recognition that the Commission itself, as it serves to the member states to sort of harmonize the delivery of the curriculum itself, we see it fit to be able to support the curriculum framework with actual content that at present teachers need and the learners need. And it's not just a matter of the content, but how the content itself is presented and how the learner is expected to engage with that content, with the understanding that the means for which they're engaging can be very widely varied and indeed distributed. So I don't know if the presentation is ready from the production end.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So maybe we can go to the next slide very quickly in the interest of time. So what you're seeing on screen here is a sort of schematic of the concept of what we're trying to build for the Commission and for the citizens of the OECS. And that is to provide offerings for education purely for the learner, or the learning and instructional aspect of education, as well as for the training of teachers, a professional development of teachers, educators. There's also the knowledge management component of this ecosystem, which focuses on professional development for those who are within the Commission, as well as citizens throughout the member states. And of course, there's the intention we have as well to catalog and archive publications of the OECS and what have you. So let's move on to the next slide, please. And so a major component of what we're trying to do is the learning and instructional delivery. And what we are doing is combining a set of resources under this one tranche. And while these resources will come from different sources, they'll come from different platforms, they are at the same time being developed, they will all be accessible through one portal or one landing page. Next slide, please. So it's important to understand what we're trying to build here is a platform that is going to support, a distributed learning approach. Needless to say, resilience is what we're trying to build, and it is because of the various threats that face us as small island developing states, and that is true of the entire Caribbean. And so, being aware of all of those risks, we are trying to mitigate as best as we can against them by trying to have these resources available so that in the event of any other disaster, that we can at least have a measure of continuity with regard to the delivery of education. Next slide, please. And so you've heard me use the term distributed a couple of times already. And this is really in a recognition of the fact that the traditional and I would say the norm for the way we did the brick and mortar learning in the past, we recognize that this is not necessarily going to continue as it did before. And perhaps the best we can hope for is a hybrid of face-to-face and online and, approaches in between. And so as we build those resources, build these platforms, and we train and improve capacity, it is with a vision of transitioning to a distributed learning system, which in itself is what we anticipate will help us build that kind of resilience. Next slide, please. So far, we've been able to put together a OCS campus platform for the commission. And that, what you're seeing on screen would be, in essence, the main landing site or the hub where everything connects. And so what we intend to do is to have all of the pieces available through this conduit. And indeed, there would be, as an example of some of the tools on there, APIs that would connect the various learning management systems across the region to this platform. And so a teacher or learner does not have to necessarily leave their learning management system because that API would already facilitate access to the information that is available through the OCS campus. Thank you. This OCS digital library that you're seeing on screen is actually quite a gem. It is something that came out of our digital public goods program under the GIGA project. And so what we ended up having is this relationship with the Global Digital Library, a repository of over 6,000 books that is made available to the world as a digital public good. And what they've done is they've agreed to make a replica of their platform for the OCS. And very soon you will see the appearance of this site changing somewhat with the OCS branding and labeling and color schemes and what have you. And this is something that we were able to make available to learners and teachers in the region in September of last year. And it comes in at a good time because of the vast amount of resources that are available there and the focus on literacy development. Another initiative we're undertaking, and it's already, I think, hosting about 3,000 resources, is this Colibri Studio platform. And what we've done here is we've sort of curated early grade learning resources, and they're curriculum aligned and well cataloged and easy to locate, and as well transfer. And so they're existing on this Colibri platform, and we intend in the future to continue building up from grades 1 to 3, so that you would find resources available for curriculum aligned resources for other grades. One point is important to note that in as much as we are able to access resources on the web from various places, it is always important that we keep in mind that it's important that keep in mind the context in which we are living and working. And so certain nuances, for example, like the appearance of the characters, the language that is used, the examples used must relate to the Caribbean and to the OECS. Next, please. Looks like my presentation is hanging. While that is transitioning, folks, I want to just reiterate one of the truths about education, important, is that at the center of it all, it's the person delivering the instruction. And perhaps one of the key oversights in the past is that the teacher or the facilitator, the role that person plays, and because the whole platform through which that teacher has been operating under has shifted, enough attention has not been paid to the pains and the burden that teachers themselves go through, trying to transition themselves from a analog now to a digital environment. This island platform that you're now seeing on screen, it's a platform that is being built specifically for the OECS, and it's meant to achieve two things mainly. One, to provide teachers in the region with content or digital content development abilities. I say it that way deliberately because it is not in itself a certificate course. It is not a degree program, but what it is a sort of a rapid fire, quick short course that teachers in the region would be able to do within 10 hours with additional webinars to learn how to quickly convert content that they will already have, or content perhaps they can find on the web, and be able to convert it into an e-learning or SCORM format that becomes a product that they can easily perhaps download or share on their learning management system or platform of choice. That is important. It is important to take away the steep learning curve and the difficulty of all of that from our teachers, so that they're able to concentrate more on the pedagogy and the actual delivery of the lesson and supporting the learners with their specific needs. The second thing this platform is doing for us is going to facilitate the development of what we are calling thematic units. We are calling them thematic units and not lessons necessarily, because the focus here is on an integrated approach to instruction, whereby each unit that is developed is going to cater to learning in different domains, in different subject areas. And so each thematic unit, we're thinking of it as a standalone product that once the learner interacts with it, they would be able to go through the content easily enough and self-assess and gauge their own skill development. Next one, please. And I want to also mention that this iLearn initiative is funded through the UNICEF Partnership Cooperation Agreement, and this is just starting. The ICE framework itself sort of reflects on some of what I've been saying earlier. In terms of developing content or instructional materials, we've given that some thought, and we have developed this framework to sort of guide how we go about selecting, evaluating, and developing resources that are meant to exist on a digital platform and resources that are meant to support distributed learning. So this, as you will see, would require that while the content or the resources are being developed, that these take into consideration inquiry and project-based approaches to learning, curriculum alignment, cultural relevance, play and game-based or gamification, for example, constructivism and what have you. So this is not just the run-of-the-mill sort of content and pictures, but activities that engage the students more meaningfully. And so this is going to be the standard. Just to highlight a couple other initiatives that would also be part of this OECS learning, digital learning ecosystem. Some of the support materials we've already developed in the last, say, 18 months since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. You will see here, there are some of these resources, video resources that were created to help with some of the psychosocial support we thought that was necessary, as well as giving some additional activities we thought that young learners in the region could benefit from, and while at the same time also highlighting things that are true about us and unique about us as a people. So these resources are already available online, and so these will remain part of the offering on the ecosystem. Next, please. Some of you may already be familiar with the Esi News Broadcast, and it's really part of the OECS, the Empower program, trying to get young people involved, get them participating in what's happening in the region, help develop their understanding of our mandate as a commission, as a regional institution, but also really giving them a better appreciation of what it is to be an OECS citizen. Next slide, please. And so you'll see this is something we run on a monthly basis. We involve children from students from around the OECS, and they're able to pretty much interview the decision makers in the region, have panel discussions, present the news, act as reporters. And so that gives them a real, I would say, real life learning experience. So as we come to a close, these are just some of the links I've pasted here and for where things sit right now. Next slide, please. The intention, of course, is to eventually move a lot of these resources more closely to one home. And in the meantime, we are just indicating that there are specific challenges or hurdles we need to clear first. And so these are highlighted in this slide right here. Funding, internal capacity, and I think all of us in the region are very familiar with those. Let's just move to the final slide, and I'll close there. Yes, so this is sort of lays out where we expect we need to be reaching within the next year or two in terms of the ecosystem. So many of the pieces already are under construction, or some of them are fully built, but it's really now a matter of getting the necessary resources to have everything together, housed in one place, and to be able to sustain and grow that momentum. So I'll pause there. Thank you very much, and let me know if you have any remarks, questions, or comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony. I think the OECS is an exemplar in the Caribbean in terms of not just ICT in education and the steps you're taking here, but certainly in other areas as well, as far as ICT development is concerned. We are getting a couple of questions coming in, and I'd like to direct you more to the Q&A. So please put them in under the Q&A tab. We are catching one or two as well under the chats, but as well as we catch them, we can address them, but they're more likely to be missed if you put them under the chat than rather than under the Q&A. Let me just try to bring back in Dr. Carlos Vargas into the conversation. Dr. Vargas, you spoke earlier about UNESCO's initiatives and so on. Now, having heard some feedback from the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization and from the OECS, is there anything you would like to add or contribute now with respect to current perspectives going forward with respect on ICT in education?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And indeed, I would like to build on a couple of points that have been made in terms of what is needed and in terms of some of the challenges that there are on the one hand, we have spoken of building capacity in terms of teacher development. So this has to do not only with learning to use the digital technologies for pedagogical purposes, which is of course important, but it has to do more with something that teachers already do, which is basically the adaptability of content on formats, of the prioritization of the curriculum, of the areas that need more deepening. And that's I think just the pedagogical skills that teachers exercise on a regular basis in adapting their practices to the characteristics of their classrooms, of their communities, of the regions where they teach. So I believe that is something to be considered, because sometimes technological solutions tend to be somewhat standard. And I think the possibility of teachers being able to use, to modify, to pace instruction by means of ICTs is important. So it's not only the use of the ICTs, but this pedagogical training on adaptability. And that presupposes a recognition of the teachers and the role that they play on a day-to-day basis. This brings me back to the point that we made as to the participation of teachers in education matters altogether. And I think it's probably because of the digital gap, so probably because of a lack of familiarity with the digital environments, but teachers don't often play a role when we build these courses, when we build these programs, when we build these platforms. I mean, there's the testing, there's the piloting, but I think the actual construction of what a platform is supposed to serve, what it needs to be adaptable to, what kind of interactions it allows, is something that is very important from the outset of the design of these platforms. So I believe that is something that we need to consider as we plan for a digital transformation. It is the role that teachers can have in actually informing the way forward, from the construction of the platforms to the flexibility of provision. And of course, there are systemic changes that are needed in terms, for example, of rethinking the role of teachers, the workload, the shifts, the assistance that is needed. And I think they all amount possibly to some of the challenges that my colleague from the OECS has highlighted. It definitely, builds up on the financial needs in terms of the digital transformation, which are sometimes not taken into consideration. So apart from, of course, the connectivity, the devices, the platforms, I believe there's more work to be done in terms of the pedagogies and in terms of informing the way forward by means of teacher participation.
Thank you very much. I don't think SG Lewis is still with us, but I did notice there was one question that came in eventually for her that was asking whether there was any memorandum of understanding, for example, with regional service providers that could guarantee service quality and connectivity? I do not think so, but I think that's the challenges that the individual regulators are facing to work with the service providers, especially in these pandemic times, to expand the reach of connectivity and maintain the quality of services such that applications like remote education could take place. There are some other questions that have come up and that I would note. One of mine, which I also see posted in the Q&A, related to whether or not we have any measurements or statistics related to comparing students' progress using the online modes, the remote learning modes versus face-to-face. And maybe Dr. Vargas, you might have some information on that, whether UNESCO might have any measurements or statistics on this.
Thank you very much. There is indeed a recently launched initiative which is called Milo for monitoring learning assessments, learning achievements, particularly in times of COVID. So the UNESCO Institute of Statistics has developed this monitoring tool, which will be good to assess, to appraise the learning that has taken place in times of disruptions. But I think we need to also consider how students might progress and how this might be captured, again, as embedded, as built in the educational platforms and learning systems that are used. Something important there is that this follow-up, as much as it can be aided technologically, is usually the responsibility of teachers and where they are best placed to actually monitor what has been learned. And this is beyond standard testing and high-stake assessments. I think this has to do more, and this is another area of training for teachers. This has to do more with formative assessment, where teachers might be able to realize and to identify, for example, in the case of school closures and educational disruptions, where students remained and where students need to be brought to in terms of either compensatory or programs to catch up with what was planned in terms of learning in a particular school year. So I think beyond our assessment, our measurement of what has been labeled as learning loss, I think we should focus on how this is more of a day-to-day exercise that teachers can do by means of formative assessment. And this also has implications in the way we think the organization of learning. When we refer to learning losses, we are talking about education in a particular setting, in a particular calendar, and with a particular program. I think that sometimes becomes a straitjacket for education systems that have more difficulty in changing these formats, in adapting, and the COVID-19 was a very good example of it. So just to say that I believe that this learning needs to happen on a regular basis, that teachers need support in terms of telling what kind of learning has taken place, what kind of learning is not taking place, and ultimately on the effectiveness of digital technologies in assisting learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Anthony, any perspective from the Eastern Caribbean experience that you can share here in terms of
well, certainly, but I just wanted to touch perhaps on the connectivity one first.
Yeah.
The question on that. So I mentioned earlier the GIGA project, and that project is, of course, a collaboration with involving UNICEF, ITU, and OECS. And so this project is really about connecting, every school although of course now learning does not only take place in the school. So of course we're looking at how we can, how we would speak more to connecting every child is probably a better way to think of things. But part of that program is, or one of the main pillars is trying to finance a common bid. In other words, trying to establish a financial model for how we can sustain connectivity for learning, and to basically see that through. There's the development that we've been working on of a finance committee for GIGA, and the intention is to sort of recruit for membership of this committee representatives of the ministries of finance within the OECS, as well as representatives of major regional finance institutions such as ECCB, CDB, and even going as far as IDB, CAF, so that the membership of that committee would be able to have some, let's call it some leverage in terms of pushing through the kind of solid proposals that ISPs and service providers will look at in terms of how we can make connectivity affordable and sustainable and robust to support learning in the near future. So that is a major task under the GIGA project. And that is, for now, our approach to it. We recognize in the meantime that various governments among the member states have made efforts to negotiate with the ISPs for various packages, especially since we've had this transition to online learning. But this is not uniform throughout the member states. With respect to the student progress since online learning, we collect data various ways. Some of it is from the education statisticians, but that information itself is not enough to capture on a very granular level what's happening with each child. What we do know is, unfortunately, especially near the beginning of the pandemic, is that a good number of students were not even able to access the online learning that was taking place. And in spite of efforts to provide them with devices, and in some cases, connectivity devices and MiFi devices, that simply was not enough. And even when learners were equipped with devices, their parents were not able to really insist on their participation in class. And so these are some of the issues that are still ongoing. And there's a very fluid situation, as you'll be aware of, returning to school, then, a spike, and then we have to go back to online. And so that has left a little bit of confusion in the system for parents, for teachers, for the ministries even. And that will come as a major agenda item for the 7th COM, which is the Council of Ministers meeting that the OSS Commission is hosting on the 17th and the 18th of February.
Thank you. Well, you made some comments there that were also relevant to a couple of the questions that came up on the Q&A one, talking about the digitally displaced students, the one who lack the family support and so on. So it's clearly been recognized as an issue. And I think that's part of the reason why I guess the preference is still to get the students back in school and to develop the relevant platforms that for remote learning that could help to overcome some of these challenges that they face. I'll close with one last question. How can we maximize the platforms for optimal home involvement in the educational process on a day-to-day basis? I'm not sure exactly what platforms, but I don't know if you all might have any comment, Ms. Dr. Vargas or Ms. Sand. How can we maximize the platforms for optimal home involvement in the educational process on a day-to-day basis?
I agree with you, Nigel. I don't know if I follow the question. I don't know by maximizing the platforms. I don't know what our interlocutor means.
I think it's maybe making the remote learning tools
parental involvement,
more feature rich to be able to optimize home involvement. I don't know. Well, you did mention, Dr. Vargas, about some of the platforms. The construction of the platforms needs to be appropriate for the purpose. I don't know if there are any specific aspects you might want to point to there that could help a situation where persons at home could be more involved or assist.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. I think, I mean, the best use of a platform is one that involves the many stakeholders. That's what we were trying to promote, and what we brought in from the latest publication of UNESCO on the futures of education. And when we're thinking of a new social contract, is precisely that like a platform, like a school or like a classroom, is basically a place where learners connect, where communities connect, and where many more stakeholders can participate. So indeed, I mean, I believe, and we said it before, in terms of the role of teachers, but also the role that parents can have, for example, in the interaction, in the follow-up. There was a question before around the assessment of what is learned. I think that is something that with the assistance of a given platform, teachers could be able to follow up, parents could be able to follow up as well. I mean, this is just leads more towards the information that a platform might be able to bring together, but also the stakeholders that can participate, as happens in education, but in this case, in a virtual platform. I think parental involvement is important. I think the stakeholders as well, from the teachers to the inspectors to the headmasters and the leadership of the school centers as well. So to me, the more participation there is for the many different purposes that there would be otherwise on face-to-face education, but within a platform, the more effective that could be.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there for the moment. We will have some time tomorrow morning looking at some of these platforms or educational solutions. So that would be an opportunity, I guess, for maybe some further more focused discussion on those. But let me, however, thank our panelists for this session. Dr. Carlos Vargas Tamez of UNESCO, Mr. Julian Anthony of the OECS, and of course, Secretary General Bernadette Lewis from the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization for your various perspectives. We've taken various notes. We'll proceed now to a break to resume at 11 o'clock with the second panel discussion, where we would dive a little deeper into UNESCO's competency framework for teachers. So we'll be focusing, and we'll be hearing from UNESCO again, but a different colleague of Dr. Vargas's, and also from the CXC and from Ministry of Education, Dominica.